Greetings. Welcome to our show, Ghosts R N.E.A.R, where we discuss and explore various aspects of the paranormal. I am your host, Keith Johnson. With me is my co-host and co-founder of N.E.A.R, Sandra Johnson.
Good evening from Cranston.
Yes, here we are in Cranston, Rhode Island, and tonight we're at the Oaklawn Library, investigating the premises and the history of the Oaklawn Library. And with us is librarian Stefanie Blankenship.
Hello.
Nice to have you with us.
I'm glad to have you here.
Now, of course, you are what we would call an expert on the history of the Oaklawn Library. And tell us a little about the actual history of this place. And of course, it's a very, very beautiful little library.
Thank you.
Nice place, and very family atmosphere here. But what about the actual history?
The Oaklawn Library was started in 1895 by a pastor across the street, the Oaklawn Baptist Church, Pastor Briggs, and it served as a schoolhouse before it was a library. It served as a schoolhouse from about 1834 to 1895 as the original Oaklawn School. The Oaklawn School was then relocated down the street in 1895 where a new structure was built. So the part down there was the original structure, and then it was added on in 1965, a new wing, and in 1989 they added on this part that we're standing in right now. The Shaw family was also very instrumental in starting the library. Lawrence M. Shaw was the first librarian of this library. He was very close to the people at the Oaklawn Baptist Church, and they formed the Oaklawn Free Public Library Association, which got adopted in 1896. And Mrs. Shaw, Mrs. Harriet Shaw was his wife. She served as librarian for 34 years, from 1934 to 1968.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
Very nice. Now, how did this library acquire a reputation among some people for having paranormal activity? Where did that come about?
I believe a lot of the workers here have heard strange noises that couldn't be explained as something natural outside. They've witnessed apparitions upstairs.
You're talking of the library staff?
Yes.
Not the people that did all the renovations?
Nope, the library staff. They have witnessed apparitions up here and down in the basement, and noises. It's a lot of auditory noises that are resonating with us that don't have an actual physical cause.
I see.
And you yourself have had some experiences.
I have, yes.
And as you give us the tour, you can maybe show us what happened.
Definitely.
Where.
Yes, I cannot wait.
Has anybody been truly terrified here?
No, we all feel a very calming feeling in this library. Even people walk in, they say, wow, this place feels like a home. It's a very warm and inviting place.
It does, very much.
Yeah, and the Shaw family loved this library so much. They took such good care of it. So in a way, we think that maybe they check up on us once in a while to make sure that we're doing a good job. And then they go away and they come back when they want to visit again. And we think it just might be them checking up on us.
So no one has gone running out of the building truly terrified?
No, no. There are some people who are a little hesitant to go into the basement, myself included. We feel there's a very heavy feeling down there. Even people who might not believe specifically in the paranormal just notice a very heavy feeling in the basement. So I would say that's the only part that might make people afraid, but nothing has ever happened down there that causes them to run up the stairs.
Right.
Yeah.
And basements often do have that
exactly.
effect.
Yes.
Well, we'll focus some of our investigation down there.
Great.
For sure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing that wonderful history with us, Stefanie. You're very, very knowledgeable about this place.
Thank you.
And that's exactly what we need.
It means a lot to me here, so I want to make sure that it's in good hands and that the spirits who helped start this library are very happy with us.
All right. Well, I guess it's time for the tour.
Great. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, Steph. So we've just moved over a little bit from our prior location, but you said that something actually happened to you in this section of the library. What exactly, was it a feeling, or did you see something or hear something?
Actually, it was a coworker who was looking through some video racks Before there were a bunch of racks in this room, before they were cleared out to make room for other space. And she looked over and she saw through the shelving a little boy who looked like he was dressed in 1950s clothing. And he was over here by the water fountain. And then she saw him on another occasion. And the librarian at the time came over and said, you know, you no longer have to be here, you're free to leave if you like, and they never saw him again. So she saw the apparition twice of the little boy dressed in about 1950s clothing, she would describe it as. Ironically, this part of the building wasn't here in 1950, so maybe he was able to cross over into a part that didn't exist before. My experience here was with some books on the window ledge. We put books there all the time, and as you can see, they're freestanding, and even if we jump up and down or a car goes by, they're not going to fall. I was speaking to a gentleman this past summer about the Shaw family, who I mentioned previously, right. And Mrs. Shaw, our former librarian, her father was a physician. Mm-hmm. And I've been talking to the man about some health issues I was having at the time, and all of a sudden we heard the sound of a book falling. And we said, oh, I wonder what that could be. So we walked over to the ledge, and it happened to be Health and Wellness Month, and there was a book that had fallen down, and I looked at the title, and it was Secrets of People Who Never Get Sick. And we had just been talking about Mr. Shaw's father, who was a physician, and some health problems that I was getting help with. And it was as if the spirit wanted me to read a book so I would be healthy. So it was a helpful spirit. It was a helpful occurrence.
Yeah, I want to read that book.
And that's basically all that's happened in this area. Just an apparition of a little boy and then a book falling in response to something that I might have been asking for.
Well, we do have running water.
True.
And we have the restroom right in back here, I guess, too. And something that we've noticed is that a lot happens around running water sources. So yes. I suppose that could be a possibility.
And there's running water within the vicinity too, as well, correct?
Yes.
In this area?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, well, you've had other experiences, so lead on.
Okay, Steph, what can you tell us about this entryway? Or it looks like an entryway.
It actually was the entryway when it was the original library structure and schoolhouse. The door was here, and then there were two more windows, so it probably extended to about that window right there leading into the office. And we'll hear noises here occasionally. Behind us is the workroom closet, so we hear noises as if things are being dropped or things are moving around, but we can't find any evidence of something physically being moved.
Right.
It's more the echo of something being moved. Yeah. And ironically, this was the entryway, and we have keys here that were found by a man who lives in the librarian's home. That say library on the wooden part. He found those in the barn, and so this would have been the place where she was putting the key in to get into the library. So this is another entryway where spirits might be passing through to get in, that we're used to this as being the entrance into the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when I had looked on Google Earth at the building itself a couple of days ago, and I noticed what appeared to be, was there a staircase out here going down?
Yes.
There is, okay.
There's a staircase out there that was dug in 1965 when the addition of the children's room was put on, and that leads down into the basement.
Okay, okay. Now, have you ever heard the keys rattle?
No, but when I've been in the basement, I've heard keys rattling.
Oh, really?
When no one else is down there with me.
Very interesting. Very
yes.
interesting.
Okay, Dave, Nathan, would you mind going through some of these historical documents? I see there's reference books there and many pamphlets and articles from the era. You could just browse through them and see if you find anything significant.
Sure.
Thanks very much.
So this is a stairway to the basement. The basement was put in 1965 when this addition of the children's room was put in. They had a lot of functions down there. I don't feel comfortable in the basement most of the time. Sometimes I'm okay down there. Other people feel a heavy feeling. Right. They feel very uncomfortable down there. and I feel that way sometimes too. Some of my experiences on my first day here, I felt like something was testing me. It shut off a light on me down there, and I stood my ground, and I still went back down there that day, and it never happened since. Another time I smelled a strong scent of coffee down there, and there's no coffee down there. There would have been coffee if there was a function going on, but there was no coffee at the time. I even looked in the garbage in case the custodian had left coffee down there. And I also called a coworker downstairs to come see if she could smell the coffee as well. And she came down and she could detect a coffee smell. Interestingly, when we went back down, the closet for the janitor's supplies was open. When I had gone down originally, it was not. And I only went upstairs for about 5 minutes before we went down. So in that time frame, the door had opened downstairs, and there's a spring lock on it. You have to actually pull it back and open up the latch for the janitor's closet to open. Another time down there, I heard a closet door open, and I thought someone was down there, and I peeked around the corner and no one was there. And I came upstairs and I asked, were you downstairs? And they weren't. So it's a lot of auditory stuff. And then the fact that I smelled coffee was really interesting, because that was the social place back in the day. They had a lot of things down there. When other investigators have been here, we've had batteries die in that area between the restroom and the boiler room. And one of our workers here has seen the apparition, and she described her to someone, and someone said that's Mrs. Shaw. She never met Mrs. Shaw, but she described her to a T, down to the pearl necklace that she was wearing and the flowers on her dress.
This sighting was in the basement?
Yes, the apparition was in between the bathroom and the boiler room, and at the time the worker was in the program room eating lunch, and she just happened to catch a glimpse of a woman going about her business and did not notice her there. It was as if it was maybe a residual haunting. And that's basically the story for the basement. Just an overall heavy feeling, and some things turning off and on us, and one apparition.
Right.
Yes.
I don't know if we've covered this before. Do you consider yourself a sensitive? Do you feel that?
Yes. Years ago, when I first came into this building, when I first started working for Cranston, they gave me a tour of all the branches. I walked in and immediately I said, what did this place used to be? Because I could sense that it was something. It smelled like one of those, like wood, you know, like there was wooden floors when there was the schoolhouse there, and when it was the original library. I could smell all that. And they said, yes, it used to be a schoolhouse. And I feel that sometimes when I'm open to it, things will happen, and when I close myself off, they stop. But I'm pretty sensitive when things happen like that, and I'll stay away if I know that something's going to affect me in a negative way.
Yeah. And that's the reason you don't really want to go down to the basement very much.
Right. I don't go down there when I'm alone. I feel that if I go down there when I'm alone, I might hear footsteps up here, and that will kind of scare me. So I'll only go downstairs if there's other workers in the building with me. That way I know if I hear footsteps, it's them, or children in the children's room.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I thought that I read online, like somewhere in this historical district.
Oh, it might have been when they built the Chapel View, where the boys' home was, the boys' school, just down the road. When they were digging the grounds, they found artifacts and bones and things like that. So, yeah, that's probably.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with that.
It's not over here, no. But there were some people that I know when they were younger boys in this neighborhood, they would come and look for arrowheads on this property, and they would find them. So there's a little bit of a tie-in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stefanie, what can you tell us about this particular area right here? I know you felt some things here.
Yes, this is the old schoolhouse part of the library, which was about 1834 to 1895, and then 1896 it became the first Oaklawn Library. In this spot here by the window is where Mrs. Shaw's desk was when it was a library in 1934. And people who come around this area sometimes feel a little spooky feeling. People that have known this library when it was the way it used to be remember Mrs. Shaw as a librarian who would make sure there was no noise going on at all, and she would always shush people, as your typical librarian back then would. So whenever I come down into this area to find books, sometimes when I'm looking for a particular book, I'll come to the shelf and it'll already be pulled out for me. And that's happened on more than one occasion.
As if in anticipation of the exact book you'll be looking for.
Exactly. The book has been pulled out for me, so it's easy to find. Again, a very helpful spirit. And if Mrs. Shaw's desk truly was there, it would make sense that she would just get up and find the book for me. Yes.
That's easier than online reference.
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. So when I had a ghost investigation group here in the summertime, we split up into 3 groups, and my group at the time was in the basement, and we heard a banging noise coming from up here. And later on, it was told to us that they were asked, "Are you looking for a book? Would you show us what book you're looking for?" And these 2 books came flying off the shelf. They came off and they plunked down, and that was the noise that we had heard. And the books that fell were Wills, Estates, and Trusts, and Foreclosure. So I didn't know anything about this at the time, but after a local man who knows a lot about the history of the area told me that Mrs. Shaw, the librarian here, is buried with her husband, the original librarian, Lawrence Shaw. Her dates of her birth and death are not on her gravestone, and he had to contact lawyers to know why her dates weren't on the stone, and they said it had to have been in her will. So we're thinking that maybe she wants her dates put on her stone and wants us to look through this book to figure out how. Another instance that involves these books is when another group was here for a program with the public. We were asking questions with dowsing rods, and they pointed behind these books in the other section, but when we asked, "What are you looking for? What can we help you with?" the dowsing rods pointed to the backs of these books, and right in front of them, again, the Wills, Estates, and Trust book.
Really?
2 separate groups investigating same book that it came up with. It's maybe a coincidence, but the fact that her dates are not on her tombstone and it has to go through her will, maybe has something to do with it. So maybe she's looking for some help.
Can you think of any plausible, natural explanation why those books, these particular books in this spot, would come falling out like that?
Well, when the trucks go by on this street, there's no basement here. It's an old building built on an old foundation. However, no matter how heavy a truck is that has driven by, books have never fallen off of these shelves. That could be an explanation if there was enough force and they just came flying out. Now, the fact that they're in the middle of the shelf, the likelihood of them coming out isn't too high. If they were back here, I'd say, okay, you know, it's like a loose tooth. It'll just come out. We also try to push books from the other side to see if 2 books will come out perfectly, and it's kind of haphazard. It's not perfectly aligned the way they were. So we've tried to disprove it. Books have never fallen before or after then. It was just that one time. Another thing that happened in this area was I was at the desk and I heard the sound of books being looked through, and I came down here to investigate, and no one was here. A coworker then joined me. There was only 2 of us here in the building at a time, and the noise happened again. Later on, we were behind the desk and we heard a noise coming from the back office, and then knocking noises coming from another area, which we'll get to later. So it seemed like something or someone was looking for something here in this library, and we're just trying to make sense of it all and put it together. Yep.
Very interesting.
Yes. And one more interesting story about this area was I was giving a impromptu ghost tour to people who were interested in the local lore of this library. And I was explaining that the church across the street, Oaklawn Baptist Church, had a huge role in starting this library, and that they had the first May breakfast ever in the country.
Oh, really?
And yes, as soon as I mentioned the church, an alarm went off. And it wasn't our alarms. I opened up the door right there, and the alarm of the church was going off. And later on, I found out that the cleaning lady was there, and she was going about her business, and the alarm just went off, and she got spooked, and she ran out of the building. And there was no reason why the alarm should have gone off. She's never triggered it before, and it just so happened I was talking about the church at that time.
Right at that moment.
Exactly. Yes. And it's basically just little noises we hear in this area from now and then. It doesn't happen all the time. If it happened every time a truck or car went by, I'd say, okay, it's the building shaking, but it doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes it's quiet in here, and other times there's noise. It's not predictable at all, and we've tried to disprove it, and we haven't been able to yet.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The binder that I picked up to study was the history of Oaklawn Library, 1896 through 1989.
Okay.
And I've only had a chance to look at the beginning of it, but it states that it has the biography of Joseph A. Shaw, and it has the original, I think it was like a invitation to like a ceremony of the opening of the library on Wednesday evening, May 20th. And it was held at the church at 8 o'clock.
What year would that be?
It's 1889. And it says the library would be open on Mondays and Thursday evenings from 7:30 to 9:30, and on Saturday afternoon 4:30 to 7:30. So they're open much later, in fewer days, I guess, than nowadays.
I guess that's as long as the gas would stay in the lamp.
How much the candle could handle.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so here we are in the children's section. We're going to try an EVP session, see what we come up with here. My understanding is that this is not the epicenter of activity, but we'll see what we can capture. If there's anyone here who is unseen to us, can you give us a sign of your presence? I did hear one tap, and that's good if that was you. We'd really like you to use your voice if that's possible. What is your name?
What is your association to this library?
I'm checking for any possible electrical output that could cause hallucination. What do you think, Nathan?
Do you know if they're renovating this room, or?
I don't know if renovation is currently going on down here, but certainly it has the appearance of a work in progress. Does the church building across the street have any significance here?
What is the significance of this land for you? Do you go hunting here? Do you receive education here? Is it your home?
You know, I can see why Stefanie would feel uncomfortable down here.
Yes, I can too.
It's a very dark place.
It's tight.
Exactly. Almost like a claustrophobic feeling down here.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, here we are over in these stacks. There's been reports of books moving around here. Let's get started. Is the person who pushed some books off the shelf so that they hit the ground somewhere in this room? If you are, would you please come over here and answer a few questions for us? We'd like to learn some more about you.
Again, was it you who moved the books?
The librarian has explained to us that these two books at one time came off the shelf and physically hit the floor. We can't find any reason for it. The shelves are very, very heavy. This very level. And the shelves actually slope down towards the center of the shelf. There's books on both sides, so it slopes down towards the center, which means that something had to push the books toward the outside, and they would have hit the floor. We can't find any reason for why that happened.
Okay, so now our team is going to review the evidence, and we shall make a return trip. And
yeah, well, it has been a very productive evening, and we look forward to coming back here. And thank you very much, everyone, and Stefanie in particular, for allowing us access here tonight. We hope we find something, even if it's to disprove or to prove. Good night. God bless.
good night, all.